Elena sat near the window of the airplane. Her heart was full of hope and excitement. This was her first time traveling alone. She was going to London. It was a place she had always wanted to visit. As the plane began to land, she looked outside. She saw many small buildings and bright lights. Everything looked beautiful. Elena smiled and said quietly, "I made it. I'm really here." She felt happy, but also a little nervous. Elena had studied English for 2 years. She was good at reading and writing, but speaking and listening were harder for her. Now she would need to use English in real life. At the airport, she followed the signs. She read them slowly. Passport control. Baggage claim. Exit. She took her time. She didn't rush. When she got to the information desk, a kind woman smiled at her and said, "Need help, love?" Elena's heart started to beat faster. She took a breath and said slowly, "Yes, I want to go to the city, please." The woman nodded and said, "Take the Heathrow Express. It's easy." Elena smiled and said, "Thank you very much." It was a short conversation, but it made her feel more confident. Outside, Elena saw something she had only seen in pictures before: a big red double-decker bus. She took out her phone and took a photo. She looked around. People were walking quickly. Some were talking on the phone. Others were laughing with friends. The city felt alive. Elena whispered to herself, "This is not a dream. This is real." After a short train ride, she arrived at her hotel. She walked to the front desk. The receptionist smiled and said, "Welcome to London. Your room is on the 3rd floor. Here's your key." Elena understood every word. She was proud. She smiled and said, "Thank you." When she got to her room, she looked in the mirror. She smiled and said to herself, "Good job, Elena." Then she remembered something her English teacher once said: "Talk to the city." It was a way to practice English. So Elena stood by the window. She looked outside and began to speak. "I see a street. I see people. I see a cafe. The cars are moving. The sky is blue." She spoke slowly and clearly. She didn't worry about making mistakes. She was practicing, and that was enough. Later, she took a short walk around the neighborhood. She saw a bakery and smelled fresh bread. She saw a bookstore and many red phone booths. Everything felt new and exciting. She wanted to say what she saw out loud. It was fun. It also helped her think in English. As the sun went down, she sat on a bench near her hotel. She looked at the people around her and smiled. Today was not a perfect day, but it was a good day. She used English. She had talked to people. She had learned new things. That made her feel strong. She opened her notebook and wrote a short sentence. "Today I spoke English in London. I was nervous, but I did it." She looked at the sentence and smiled. She read it out loud. It was a simple sentence, but it felt important. That night, as she lay in bed, she thought about her day. She remembered the bus, the people, the woman at the airport, and the friendly receptionist. She remembered how scared she felt, but also how proud she was. She knew that tomorrow she would try again. She would speak a little more. She would listen a little better. She would keep learning. Before she closed her eyes, she whispered one more sentence in English. "I am learning. I am trying. I will not stop." Then she smiled and fell asleep, ready for a new day in London. In the evening, Elena felt tired but happy. She had walked around London all day. She saw the London Eye, a big wheel by the river. She visited a bookshop and bought a small English storybook. Now she was hungry and ready for dinner. She walked near her hotel and found a small bistro. It looked warm and cozy. There were lights in the window and people inside were smiling. Elena looked at the sign. It said, "Traditional English food." She smiled and thought, "This is a good place." When she opened the door, a young waiter smiled at her. He said, "Good evening. Table for one?" Elena answered, "Yes, please." He showed her to a small table by the window. She sat down and looked around. The place felt friendly. She relaxed. The waiter came back and gave her a menu. "Take your time," he said. Elena opened the menu and started to read. She saw some words she knew: chicken, soup, salad. Then she saw one dish called spicy chicken curry. She liked chicken. She had eaten curry before in her home country. But one word made her stop. The word was spicy. She was not sure what it meant. She tried to guess. She thought, spicy. Maybe it means warm. I want warm food. It's cold outside. She smiled. Yes, I want that. The waiter returned and said, "Are you ready to order?" Elena smiled and said, "Yes, I want spicy chicken curry, please." The waiter wrote it down and asked, "How spicy do you want it? Mild, medium, or hot?" Elena thought again. She remembered that hot means warm, and she liked her food very warm. She smiled and said, "Very, very hot, please." The waiter looked a little surprised, but said, "All right, very, very hot it is." 15 minutes later, the waiter brought her food. The plate looked colorful, and the smell was strong. It smelled good, but also different. Elena took her fork and tried the first bite. Right away, her mouth felt like it was on fire. It was too hot. Not warm, but spicy. Her eyes got big. Her face turned red. Her mouth burned. She took a sip of water, then another. "Oh no," she thought. "What did I say? What did I do?" The waiter came back and looked at her kindly. "Is everything okay?" he asked. Elena tried to smile. She said, "Yes, very hot, but good." The waiter smiled and said, "Just so you know, hot means spicy, not warm." Elena covered her face with her hands and laughed. "Oh, I didn't know that," she said. "It's okay," the waiter said. "Many people make the same mistake. You're not alone." Elena laughed again. Her face was red, but not from the spice anymore. She felt shy, but also a little proud. She had made a mistake, but she had learned something new. She whispered to herself, "I feel hot. I learned that hot means spicy. Next time, I will say mild." She wrote the sentence in her notebook. It was her way to remember the lesson. She looked at her plate. The food was too spicy, but she ate a little more. She didn't want to waste it. She chewed slowly and drank more water. Even though it burned, she smiled. After dinner, she paid the bill and said thank you. The waiter smiled again and said, "See you again." Elena waved goodbye and walked back to her hotel. As she walked, she thought about the dinner. It was funny. It was a little painful, but it was also a good lesson. She learned a new word. She practiced speaking. She felt stronger than before. She said to herself, "Mistakes are okay. I am learning. I am growing." And with that thought, she smiled and walked on through the London night, ready for whatever would come next. The next morning, Elena woke up early. The sun was shining and the sky was blue. She felt happy. She stretched her arms and smiled. She thought about the day before. It was full of small moments, some good and some a little funny. She remembered the spicy chicken curry and laughed to herself. Today, she wanted to try again. She wanted to speak more English, feel more confident, and enjoy her time in London. She got dressed and walked outside. The air was cool and fresh. She saw people going to work, carrying coffee, and talking with friends. Elena found a small coffee shop near her hotel. It looked quiet and peaceful. She walked inside. The smell of fresh bread and coffee filled the air. She stood in line and looked at the menu on the wall. She knew most of the words: tea, coffee, toast, muffin. When it was her turn, she smiled and said, "Good morning. I would like a cup of tea, please." The woman behind the counter smiled and said, "Of course. Please take a seat. I'll bring it over." Elena found a small table by the window. She looked outside and watched people walking past. She felt calm. A few minutes later, someone brought her tea. She looked up. It was the same waiter from the restaurant last night. He smiled and said, "Very, very hot, right?" Elena laughed. Her face turned a little red. But she didn't feel embarrassed this time. She smiled back and said, "Not today. Today I want something mild." The waiter laughed and said, "Good choice. You're learning fast." Elena felt proud. She had made a mistake the day before, but now she was better. She felt more relaxed. She had a short conversation in English, and it felt easy. She looked at the waiter and said, "Thank you for yesterday. I learned something new." "You're welcome," he said. "It's all part of the journey." After he walked away, Elena took out her notebook. She wanted to write about the moment. At the top of the page, she wrote, "Speak it forward." She remembered something her teacher once said. When you learn something, speak it forward. Tell someone else. Use it in real life. That is how you remember it. So Elena decided to write her story in English. She wrote, "Yesterday, I went to a restaurant. I ordered spicy chicken curry. I said, 'Very, very hot.' But it was too spicy. I didn't know that hot meant spicy. Now I know. Today, I told the waiter. We laughed. I feel better. I feel happy." After writing, she read the story out loud, slowly and clearly. It was short, but it was real. It was her story. She smiled and whispered, "I am learning. I am growing." She finished her tea and looked around. The coffee shop was full of quiet sounds, people reading books, soft music playing, warm lights on the walls. It felt peaceful. Elena felt proud of herself. Before she left, she walked past the waiter again. She looked at him and said, "Thank you again. And next time, I will say mild." "Deal," he said with a smile. Outside, the sun was a little higher in the sky. Elena walked slowly back to her hotel. She looked at the buildings, the buses, the people. Everything looked more familiar now. She felt stronger. She whispered to herself, "I made a mistake, but I tried again. I was afraid, but I spoke anyway. I will keep going." That evening, she opened her notebook again and read her story one more time. She said it out loud. She felt the words become part of her. Learning English was not just about grammar or rules. It was about real life, about speaking, making mistakes, and trying again. And today, Elena had a small victory, a second chance, and it felt just right. Elena's journey in London was full of small moments, but each one helped her grow. When she first arrived, she felt excited, but also nervous. She was in a big city, far from home. She wanted to speak English, but she was afraid of making mistakes. Still, she tried. Her first day was full of courage. She followed signs, spoke to people, and used English in real life. She even talked to herself while walking around the city. That small step gave her confidence. Later, she had dinner at a bistro. She made a funny mistake with the word hot. She wanted warm food, but she said very, very hot and received spicy food instead. Her mouth burned, but she didn't give up. She laughed. She learned a new word. That mistake became a lesson. The next morning, she saw the same waiter again. This time, she spoke clearly and with more confidence. They both laughed together. Elena wrote about her experience and shared her story out loud. She learned something important. Every mistake is a chance to grow. This story shows us something very powerful. Learning a new language is not only about studying books, it is also about using the language in real life. You might feel scared. You might say something wrong. But when you try, you get better. You become braver. You build confidence. So, what is the deep lesson here? It is this: mistakes are not failures, they are steps forward. Just like Elena, you can turn a small mistake into a big success if you keep going. Don't wait for the perfect moment to speak. Speak now, speak simply, and speak often. You can apply this in your own life. Next time you go to a cafe, try ordering in English. Talk to yourself while walking outside. Write your day in English, even just one sentence. These little actions create big results. And now, congratulations! If you listened or read to the end of this story, you have already improved your English. You practiced listening, you understood new words, and most important, you felt something real. That is how true learning begins. Here's a fun question for you. What did Elena order that turned out too spicy? A. Spicy chicken curry. B. Spicy steak sandwich. Type your answer below in the comments. A or B. We'd love to see your answer. If you enjoyed this story and it helped you practice English, please subscribe to the channel. Your support gives us the motivation to keep going and make more stories just for you. Also, if you would like to help us grow, consider making a small donation. We are doing this for free to help you learn. But in the beginning, it's not easy to keep making high-quality content. Every little bit helps. Thank you so much for being part of this learning journey. See you in the next story.